Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of The Takeoff. Today, it's just me, sadly. Patrick is currently traveling around New Zealand in an old converted ambulance. So he's having a great time. But today, we're going to do about a 20-minute podcast on basically the differences and the benefits and the pros and cons of a degree versus experience. So this is something that's come to my attention over the last few weeks. I recently read an article by, I think it was the Wall Street Journal, discussing the benefits of and financial benefits of experience over a degree. So I have a few facts and figures in front of me. I think it's quite interesting. These are obviously US-based numbers, but we can sort of translate them into our sort of local economy to give us an idea of what we could be earning from a very young age, starting off in an apprenticeship, compared to the debt that we are going to essentially get into by going through a degree course. So obviously construction, engineering, the built environment, having technical qualifications is extremely important. However, I wrote a post last week about the benefits of AI and how that's going to transition and change the built environment as we know it. So we aren't too sure over the next 10 years how beneficial a degree is going to be. And I think this is why this is quite important to discuss some of these topics. So we've got a bit of, I'll put this in the show notes, this diagram that I have in front of me. But it's going to break down in some numbers as to what you could be earning in an apprenticeship compared to the debt that you're going to be getting into with a degree. Okay, so while you start an apprenticeship, these are obviously US-based numbers. Your earnings at the very beginning could be between $18 to $24 per hour. Okay, now the cost of a degree per year roughly is around $22,500 per year. So in year one of an apprenticeship, you could be earning between $37,000 to $50,000 plus benefits. Compare that to year one in university, you'd be around $22,500 in debt. Okay. Now year two, you could earn around $41,000 to $54,000 plus benefits. Year two in university, that's another $22,500 in debt. Year three, again, because you're getting trained and because you're getting better at your job, you're earning more. You could be earning between $45,000 to $58,000 plus benefits. That's another $22,500 in debt. Year four, you're going from $49,000 to $62,000 plus benefits, and again, that's another $22,500 in debt. So, if we look at that as a learning as earnings over 4 years, you could be earning between $174,000 to $224,000 as an apprentice over 4 years, or you could end up in $90,000 in debt. Okay. Now, one big thing that I take away from this compared to a degree is the years of experience that you have working in the industry. When you come out with a degree, you have 0 years experience and $90,000 in debt. If you go for the apprenticeship route, you will have earned around $170,000 to $220,000 and have 4 years experience. Okay, so we have to look at that, and I think that's quite interesting overall, that who in that case is more employable to the general construction business? Someone with 4 years experience, someone who has, got the training, the processes, understands the technical, process of building. Someone who's built relationships, understands the ins and outs of a construction business, or someone who has learned the theoretical side of construction and has no experience at all. Okay, so it's quite interesting and something that we need to really consider. So over the next few moments, I'm going to discuss the pros and the benefits of a degree, and then we will talk about the pros of an apprenticeship, and then we'll come up to a conclusion of what I think is the way to move forward. Okay, so number one, so Pros of having a degree. First of all, having a degree allows you to have a deeper understanding of the theoretical principles and concepts of underlying construction projects. Now, again, if we hear some of those words and terminologies there, theoretical principles and concepts, they don't actually have the technical technical experience of putting these together. Having that theory and having that knowledge in your mind is great, but not having that experience is somewhat of a possible negative. Okay, now where I see this as being an advantage is within certain jobs and certain areas of technical technical experience. So as an example, for me, if I'm a house owner, or if I live in an apartment or whatever it might be, generally speaking, I will want my structural engineer to have been qualified. Okay, now if my structural engineer has maybe worked up through from an apprenticeship, obviously there's a lot of merit in that. I don't know, I just feel a little bit safer knowing that my structural engineer has done, a 4 or 5 year degree program, maybe extra training around that, and knows the theoretical principles and has signed off on these larger projects. So there's certain degrees where I think having that theoretical principles and that underlying knowledge is extremely important, and that would be areas of like civil engineering, structural engineering, maybe like architecture to some extent. Essentially anything that needs signed off by a professional, I think is extremely important. Now, I've recruited in multiple different locations across the world, and degrees are thought of differently per location. Okay, so one of the main differences that I've noticed between Australia and New Zealand is, in New Zealand, really, you don't really need a degree at all. In Australia, it's like one of the first things that employers will look at. So in New Zealand, typically they prefer, say, a project manager to come from a trade background compared to coming from a construction management background. Now, the reason for that, in my opinion, is because the labour and the resource market in New Zealand is far, far smaller compared to Australia. So therefore, they typically need their project managers to have the construction experience, the hands-on experience, to ensure the quality and the technical input is of a high quality. Now, if we compare that to the labour force that we would have in Australia, it's far more mature, it's far more reliable, and that's one of the reasons why projects are delivered on time in Australia, typically compared to New Zealand. And usually in Australia, they will want every project manager, every CA, every quantity surveyor, every engineer to be qualified. That's the first thing that they're checking. It's just far more important as well. And one of the big reasons for that as well is from a capability point of view. So construction companies in Australia tender on projects, where a lot of the time in New Zealand, they will tender, but a lot of the stuff is personal handshakes. It comes down to relationships. It comes down to what you've done with that business before. Where in Australia, they'll tender on projects and have a capability profile of each member of staff. And within that member of staff, one of the big parameters is qualifications and training. If you're if you're working for a big health authority and you are entrusting a project director to deliver a $2 billion healthcare project, typically they will want that project director to have as many qualifications as possible, but also a track record of delivering hospitals. So this is one of the key things that I've learned from recruiting in multiple sectors. Another one of those is in the US as well. You'll get nowhere if you don't have a degree in the US. The US system of education is far different. And from what I've heard is that it's quite easy to get a degree in the US. It's basically like one of the first checks of really, is this person human? Is whether they've got a degree or not. And from my knowledge, having recruited in the industry for a small amount of time, is that it's quite difficult not to get a degree. So they will try and pass as many people as possible. And it's really, if you're just not showing up and you're completely flunking out, is when you're going to fail. So you will need a degree from different area and different locations. Australia, it's important. The USA, it's important. Middle East, it's extremely important. It's probably even more important there than anywhere. If you go onto LinkedIn and you see, you type in project manager in Saudi Arabia, you'll get, someone who is probably worked in the industry for 10 years, and they'll have their name and plus like 10 different letters after their name as well. So it's really important in that industry and that culture. Second of all, having a degree can demonstrate to employers that an individual has undergone rigorous training and possesses a certain level of intellectual capability, discipline, and dedication. So again, when I think about hiring for my own business, I have typically always hired those who have a degree. Now, I don't have a degree, and so it's kind of a weird one. But the reason for that is I feel like I went through basically an apprenticeship. I started in recruitment when I was 19, and really I went through 3-4 years of training before I ever really even got anywhere. But nowadays it's slightly different. When people are coming out of university, they want to get into the more senior level jobs straight away. When I was starting off, you had to really prove yourself, work your way up. I think I had the trainee recruitment consultant job title for like 2 or 3 years, which used to kill me. But ultimately, I've always decided to hire graduates. And one of the reasons for that is probably the ability to write well. I know that they've went through a level of training from the point of view of they've had to study, read, sit exams, have had to work under pressure. They've come out and generally they have a bit of debt behind them. So, they generally want to pay that off as soon as possible. But I've typically went towards the graduate point of view because of the industry that I'm in. And I do see that there is merit to going through that level of dedication and of training. And I kind of feel like it's a filtering process rather than the process of, the people that are coming to you are going to be absolutely phenomenal. That's not the case. But it does typically filter out, the good candidates from the average candidates. So, I mean, there are different reasons as to why there are pros to a degree. And another one of them as well is just the types of roles that they're working in. Again, it's going back to that point of really, would you entrust a structural engineer or an architect or whatever it might be to build if they haven't went through all that theoretical training? Again, for me, probably not. We're noticing though that universities and students overall are beginning to look at the education system and looking at it and going, well, what am I getting from this? What am I likely to achieve once I come out of university? Okay, now, one of the big differences I've noticed from a graduate, say a quantity surveying graduate, they can come out and earn up to 80 or 90K straight away because there's so high demand. Now, if you haven't got that experience, sometimes that can be lorded over you. As an example, I've recently placed a candidate who has 9 years experience but hasn't officially finished their qualifications. They will finish their qualifications in the next couple of years, but they've been working in that industry for 9 years. Now, their current employer has basically lorded that over them and said, hey, we're not giving you a pay rise because you haven't got your degree yet. Now, for me, that's slightly unfair because they do have all of that training and experience in the background. But it sometimes can be used against you if you haven't got the degree. And in my opinion, sometimes if you can combine both your technical and hands-on experience with learning, you could be on to a winner. One of the best candidates that I've ever worked with, and he's become a good friend of mine, he left school when he was 16. He got a carpentry got a carpentry apprenticeship where he worked until he was 20. He then moved into site supervision, up into site management very, very quickly. At that time, he started studying at nighttime, got his degree, a bachelor's in construction management. By the time he was like 25 or 27 or something like that, he had a degree and around about 11 years hands-on experience. By the time he was 30, he went and got his master's. And then from there, he's 30, he's a project director. He has like 14 years hands-on experience and 2 degrees. Again, like that's such a smart way of doing it, of being able to get experience hands-on and then being able to get the degrees and the qualifications in the background. And one of the other things to consider as well from a degree point of view, there are different ways that you can get the same level of qualifications, but not necessarily spending 3-4 years of your life up front, going to class and getting a degree. You can sort of basically snip it all up and go, right, I'm going to start off with a certificate. Maybe it's a certificate in construction. Okay, that takes a year. I've done that. And then you could look at, right, I'm going to go and do a diploma, which might take another 2 years. And then it could be, right, from my certificate plus my diploma, I really only need to finish 1 year of university, which allows me to get a bachelor's. So again, there's different ways that you can come to the same conclusion without having to, spend 20 to 30K upfront per year. When your head's not really in it, you're not really that interested in it, you might just want to go out and get some experience. So there are different ways that you can get the same level of credibility without having to completely forgo the experience on site. So now we're going to talk about the pros of hands-on training and hands-on experience. So obviously having hands-on experience allows you to learn and develop your knowledge of construction processes a lot quicker than you would in university. So if you're say a joiner or a carpenter on site, your first day, you're 16, 17 years old, you're going through, you're working with an experienced tradesperson who's maybe been in the industry for 20 or 30 years. You're working with them day in, day out. What you'll learn from them as a mentor is unbelievably advantageous to your career. You probably don't understand the benefits of a mentor until you're a little bit older. I'm 31 now, and I have had different mentors throughout my career, and I always look back at them and I'm so grateful for what they done, the time that they invested in me, the belief that they showed in me, and that is in itself is just so important. Mentors don't get enough credibility, and if you're working with someone from 16 to 21 and they show you the ins and outs of the industry, they give you experience on residential projects, commercial projects, they invest in you from a personality point of view. Typically when you start and you're a teenager, and then by the time you're 21, you're usually a different person. They're there picking you up in the morning at 6:30, getting you on the site. They're putting some definition around your life from making sure there's discipline there, getting you out of bed, getting you to work, giving you a hard day, on site. And my old man will always talk about his days where, he started working as a plumber and was making like 50p a week or something like that. He always tells me, and it's like, all right, Dad, calm down. But these are the things that we have to think about. But he always talks about the people that invested in him. He went out to Germany and got experience out there. And the different people that he met over time, and I mean this allows you to build a great life. So I do think those first 4 or 5 years, having that mentor who's giving you the ins and outs of the industry is just so beneficial. And if we look at that and we compare that to maybe sitting in a lecture theater, are you going to get the same? You're going to get the same benefits? I don't know. It's something that you sort of need to consider. But your knowledge over that period of time will advance so quick. From what you'll do from learning to pick up a hammer to reading construction drawings to actually understanding the technical and how actually it's put together, to learning, right, this detail isn't even on the plan, but I know that it needs to be built, so we need to really look at how we actually put this together. Over time, you might be interacting with different clients, hearing what they're saying, providing advice. All of that before you're 21 is, I mean, it's unbelievable in terms of a training point of view. So understanding those, and again, you'll actually develop an understanding of the construction process, local regulations, building codes, cultural considerations. These different things that you'll pick up along the way is probably something that you can't learn in a classroom. Another point of view is adaptability. Basically, you become a lot more adaptable and a lot more agile having hands-on experience than having you're basically going through a degree route. With a degree route, your hand is sort of held. This is the career that you're choosing. This is what you will have to do. So, for example, if you're doing a QS degree, usually you're going to become a QS. If you're doing a structural engineering degree, that's what you're essentially doing. Now, if you decide to become do a degree in, an apprenticeship in plumbing or an apprenticeship in joinery and construction, you become a lot more versatile. You do become, your people skills will probably improve considerably. Your process and your technical knowledge will improve along as well, and your network will also improve, and that's something that you can't put a figure on. Your network, those mentors that you've had, the jobs that you've actually delivered, the people that you've met along the way. You start off as an apprentice plumber, but again, you'll meet apprentice joiners, you'll meet apprentice carpenters, you'll meet project managers, electricians, whatever it might be. You'll meet those people on a project, and over 4 or 5 years, that network builds up. And when you're 21, all of a sudden you might know 50 people, you might know 100 people. But if you're doing a degree, who do you know? You might know those other people in your degree, but really they're kind of useless to you at that point because they also have no experience. So it's something to consider, that you do build on, you do get that hands-on experience, you get those technical skill sets, you get that understanding of construction processes, you do become a lot more adaptable, your reputation and your network grows over time. You also earn money rather than getting put into debt. You get great mentors along the way. But again, you will then finish, and at one point you'll go, well, I might want to go work in, say, Saudi Arabia or the US. And sometimes what you'll find is that your qualifications, so say if you've done a qualification in plumbing, because what will happen is you'll do an apprenticeship, and within that apprenticeship you'll sit specific tests, and you'll become a qualified plumber or a qualified tradesperson. But what I've actually noticed is that in the UK, certain apprenticeships don't actually translate to different countries. So, for example, you might end up having to resit certain areas of your plumbing apprenticeship in Australia, as an example. And so there isn't, this is why this is such an interesting concept, because there isn't one way is better than the other. But if you were to do a degree in Australia and move to the UK, that degree by and large will translate. Now, that's usually because they're Commonwealth countries. If you're doing a degree in Sri Lanka or India or somewhere like that, even though I do think that they are Commonwealth, but because they're different cultural and different building codes and all that sort of stuff, you will have to go through an approval process with the likes of, say, Engineers of Australia or the Australian Institute of Quantity Surveyors or something like that. and you will have to get your qualifications checked and moderated beforehand. So there's so many different nuances to what's better. If I'm talking about what I believe and in conclusion, what I think is better, it's probably a mix of both. It makes you so well-rounded, and it makes you so beneficial to future employers by actually having both sides of the coin. Now, one of the things that from my country they do really well, and I think this is the perfect blend of both, it's what they call a sandwich degree. Okay, so when you finish your say you finish your A levels or your leaving cert or whatever it's called in Australia and New Zealand, you're 18, you go off to university. The first 2 years of university, you're doing theory. That's all. In your third year, it becomes a placement year, right? So your third year, you go out to a construction company and you ask for a job. You get a job on site. You work there full time for a year, okay? And then you come back with your fourth year. And in your fourth year, typically, there's a lot less study and theory. And maybe it's from going from 30 hours a week down to, say, 18. And so for basically 22 hours a week, usually that company keeps you employed to work part-time. So when you come out of university, you'll have a degree and plus a year and a half of experience on site. Now, usually what will happen is that employer will offer a position to that candidate straight away because they're valuable. They know the company's IP. They have built networks in that business. They have worked through different challenges, delivered projects. And again, they have become valuable because they have experience plus the degree. So that in itself, I believe, is an opportunity for different cultures, different countries to actually look at the structure of the degree. Coming out and doing a 3-4 year degree and having no experience is difficult for graduates. Now, they might go and do, 10 hours a week or something like that, but actually having worked full time on site for a year is so beneficial. Now, if we look at internships in Australia, one company, say like Multiplex, might have 8 internships available in Brisbane, but there's probably 300-400 students applying for those. So there's, hundreds and hundreds of students who don't get that opportunity. And they don't get that opportunity typically because they might not fit the profile, and that's the reality. Usually right now in today's terms, they want their interns to have as much, to be quite diverse and come from different cultures. And that's obviously completely fine. But ultimately there's so many people that are just getting rejected. But if they had have come out of university with nearly 1.5 to 2 years experience, again, so much more beneficial, and it's so much better for the company as well as the graduate and the candidate who comes on the market. So I'll be interested in hearing your thoughts on this. Obviously, there's no right or wrong way. I've seen guys who've left school at 16 and are now project directors of some of the biggest companies in the world. But also I've seen guys who've done an apprenticeship and maybe that they haven't got to those heights before. And again, similarly with a graduate comes out and, it's not necessarily coming down to their education. It comes down to their how good they are. And so there's no right or wrong way. My opinion probably comes down to attitude. It comes down to the individual. If you do an apprenticeship or if you do a degree, it doesn't necessarily matter. However, it has to be right for you, has to be right for your situation that you're in at that moment. You might just need money in the pocket at that particular time in your life, or you might just want to go and have a few years and, go out and experience the world, go to a different city, different country, learn a language, different strokes for different folks. But it comes down to attitude, who you are, what makes you motivated, what drives you, is what really is going to push you forward in your career. So interested in hearing your thoughts, guys. If you have any comments to make, let me know. If you can give us a review on Spotify or Apple, that would be greatly appreciated. The more reviews that we get, the more people that listen, the more people that listen, the more time that I want to invest in getting guests and getting thinking about different topics. So if you can give us a review, please do so. I'll be back next week, and I hope you enjoyed the episode.
Bye.